Okay, let's dive in. Picture this. You're standing right at the very start, the absolute beginning of one of the world's, well, greatest rivers.
Hmm.
Today we're taking a journey to Itasca State Park, the source of the Mississippi.
That's right.
And this isn't just some park. Think of it as like a living lesson in Minnesota's waters, and honestly, just a fantastic place to explore.
Absolutely. Itasca State Park,
Hmm.
up there in northern Minnesota. It's more than just pretty scenery. It's geologically significant, historically significant.
Right.
It's where that huge Mississippi River actually begins. A tiny stream, really.
Yeah.
It's a great spot for anyone who loves the outdoors and wants to learn a bit.
Totally. So our mission for this deep dive is basically to give everyone a quick but hopefully really engaging look at Itasca. You know, its history, the highlights, some cool facts.
Yeah, spark some curiosity, maybe inspire a visit.
Exactly. So let's get straight to it. The big one,
Yeah.
the source. Where does this mighty river actually bubble up?
It all kicks off at the headwaters, right there in Lake Itasca. And here's the thing that blows people away.
Yeah.
You can actually walk across the Mississippi right at the start.
No way. Like just walk across. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a small stream there. They've put down stepping stones, so you can literally hop from one bank to the other.
That's amazing to stand right there.
It really is. It connects you, directly to this river that travels thousands of miles. It's quite a feeling.
I bet. It's almost like unbelievable that that little trickle becomes the Mississippi we picture, right?
Exactly. And that starting point, Lake Itasca itself, well, it has its own origin story. It didn't just appear.
Okay, so how did the lake get there? Glaciers, I'm guessing? Minnesota, lakes?
You got it. Glaciers. It's a classic Ice Age story. As those massive ice sheets retreated, maybe, 10,000 years ago?
Roughly, yeah?
They basically scraped and dumped rock and soil, creating these ridges called moraines.
Ah, okay, moraines.
And these moraines acted like natural dams, blocking the flow of melting water. The water pooled in the depressions left behind by the ice. And voila, you get a lake.
So Lake Itasca is basically a giant glacial pothole.
Huh. In a way, yeah. A very scenic pothole. And it's the same process that formed, countless other Minnesota lakes, even the famous chain of lakes down in Minneapolis, Calhoun, Harriet.
Oh, right, same
It's
origin.
like basic geology at play. It just shows the massive power of those glaciers.
Wow. So standing by Lake Itasca, you're looking at ancient history. Okay, so the water starts there. Then what? Where does it go?
Well, from Itasca, it begins that epic journey south. But here's a neat little geographical fact about Minnesota.
Okay.
The state sits right on top of a major hydrological divide, a triple divide, actually.
Ripple, what does that mean?
It means that rain falling in Minnesota can end up flowing in one of three completely different directions to three different major bodies of water.
Seriously?
Yep. Some water flows north, eventually reaching Hudson Bay via the Red River.
Okay,
Other water heads east, through the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence Seaway, all the way out to the Atlantic Ocean.
Wow, the Atlantic.
And then, of course, there's the water from Lake Itasca that heads south down the Mississippi, eventually reaching the Gulf of Mexico.
That's incredible. So depending on where a raindrop falls.
Exactly. You could end up in the Arctic, the Atlantic, or the Gulf. You could almost think of your own house having a watershed address, depending on where your rainwater ultimately flows.
I love that, my watershed address. Gotta figure that out.
Well,
Now, Itasca isn't just geologically important. It's got history too, right? Conservation history.
oh, absolutely. Big time.
Sure.
Itasca State Park is actually Minnesota's oldest state park.
Oldest. Really? When was it established?
Get this, 1891.
1891. Wow, that's really early for a state park.
It is. And it really highlights that people understood, even way back then, that this area was special, that the source of the Mississippi needed protection.
So there was already a conservation mindset back then.
Seems like it. It shows a certain foresight, doesn't it? Recognizing the value of preserving these natural landscapes before they were, potentially lost or significantly altered.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about the river source, but the whole ecosystem.
That's pretty impressive for the time. Okay, so we've got the source, the glacial lake, the history. If someone actually goes there, what should they look out for? What are the highlights within the park?
Well, the park is incredibly diverse.
Oh.
It's not just the lake and the stepping stones, though those are obviously key.
Right.
You've got beautiful forests, lots of wetlands, varied terrain, and it all shows you how water interacts with the land in different ways.
How so?
Well, think about it. Forests, wetlands, areas with lots of vegetation, they tend to absorb rainwater, right? Like a sponge.
Okay, yeah.
But then you have impervious surfaces like roads or parking lots in or near the park. Water just runs right off those.
Causes runoff, maybe erosion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see those different processes happening right there in the park. It's a real-world lesson in hydrology just by walking around.
Huh. Never thought of a park walk that way. What about the lake itself? Lake Itasca. Anything special about it as a lake ecosystem?
Yeah, Minnesota lakes, Itasca included, have some interesting dynamics. In the summer, they often stratify.
Stratify.
Like layers, precisely. Layers based on water temperature.
Yeah.
The sun warms the surface water, making it less dense, so it floats on top of the colder, denser water below.
Okay.
But then in the fall, as the air cools, that surface water cools down too. It gets denser and eventually sinks, mixing with the deeper water.
Ah, the fold turnover. I've heard of that.
That's the one. It's like the lake takes a deep breath, mixing everything up, oxygen, nutrients. It's vital for the lake's health.
Fascinating. And these layers and the mixing, that must affect the life in the lake.
Absolutely. Different parts of the lake support different communities. You've got the littoral zone.
Littoral.
Yeah, the shallow area near the shore where sunlight reaches the bottom. Lots of plants, insects, small fish hang out there.
Okay.
Then there's the limnetic zone, the open, sunlit water away from shore. Plankton, bigger fish.
Right.
Below that, you get the profundal zone. Deep, dark, cold, fewer organisms live there.
They're the very bottom.
That's the benthic zone, the lake floor itself. Home to decomposers, burrowing insects, things that feed on whatever settles down. It's a whole interconnected system.
A lake isn't just a bowl of water then. It's a complex habitat.
Definitely not. And Itasca is a great place to see that, or at least appreciate it.
What about wildlife around the lake? Birds, animals.
Oh, it's fantastic for wildlife, especially bird watching. They actually have a park checklist, and it's pretty extensive.
Oh, cool. Like what? Common stuff or?
Both, really. You'll probably see your regulars, mourning doves, robins, maybe some killdeer by the shore, ruby-throated hummingbirds buzzing around.
Right.
But you also have a good chance of spotting things like common nighthawks, chimney swifts, maybe even some less common species depending on the season. So yeah, bring binoculars if you go.
Good tip. Binoculars noted. Now, you mentioned protection earlier. Is there like a specific group managing this headwaters area?
Yes, there is. The park itself is within a larger area called the Mississippi Headwaters Corridor. And that corridor is managed by the Mississippi Headwaters Board, or MHB.
MHB. Okay. What do they do?
Well, they were formed back in 1980. It's actually a joint agreement between 8 counties in the area, enabled by state law.
8 counties working together.
Yep. And their main goal is to protect the river's values: natural, scientific, cultural, historic, recreational. The whole package.
How do they manage that? Regulations?
Primarily through land use regulations within that corridor,
Yeah.
and also by working in partnership with landowners, local governments, other agencies. It's collaborative.
Makes sense. What's their biggest focus? Water quality.
Water quality is huge for them. They really emphasize protecting both the surface water, the river and lakes, and the groundwater, because it's all connected, right?
Right. What goes into the ground can end up in the river.
Exactly. And unfortunately, like many places, the headwaters region is seeing pressure from development. More housing, agriculture, some industry.
And that impacts the water.
It can, yeah. Converting natural land can increase runoff, carrying pollutants like nitrogen and phosphorus into the water. It can also reduce the natural filtering that forests and wetlands provide.
So the MHB's work is kind of like preventative medicine for the river?
That's a great way to put it. They understand that protecting the water quality right here at the source is way more effective and ultimately cheaper than trying to fix problems way downstream.
Protect the source, protect the river.
That's the core idea. Early action is key.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, before we start wrapping up, any other cool, surprising facts about Itasca or the headwaters?
We'll just reinforcing the journey, That water starting at your feet travels over 2,300 miles to the Gulf of Mexico.
2,300 miles. It's staggering.
It really is. And think about how different the river is at the start compared to, say, New Orleans.
Oh, completely different. Tiny stream versus massive waterway.
Right. At Itasca, it's generally cool, clear, flows relatively quickly. Downstream, it gets warmer, much slower, carries tons of sediment, becomes this wide, powerful force. It shows how geology, biology, land use, even just the slope of the land, shapes a river over its course.
Like watching something grow up in fast motion.
Sorta, yeah. And one more thing to ponder. Lake Itasca, like every lake on Earth, is actually very slowly aging.
Aging? How does a lake age?
Sediment, dirt, leaves, organic stuff washes in from the land around it, the watershed.
Okay.
And over long, long periods, we're talking geological time here, that material builds up on the bottom. The lake gradually gets shallower.
So eventually.
Eventually, a lake can fill in so much it becomes a wetland, like a marsh or a bog. And eventually, even that could become solid ground.
Wow. So lakes aren't permanent features, not really.
Not on a geological timescale, no. It's a good reminder that the landscapes we see are constantly, even if imperceptibly, changing.
That definitely puts things in perspective.
Well, this has been really fascinating. We've gone from glaciers to stepping stones to watershed addresses and lake aging.
Yeah.
Quite the journey through Itasca State Park.
It's a place that holds so much, doesn't it? The start of the Mississippi, that deep history, the ecosystems. We hope this little deep dive has, given folks a good feel for it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking for somewhere to really connect with nature, see the start of something iconic, and maybe learn a thing or two about how our water systems work.
Itasca is definitely worth considering. It offers that blend of natural beauty and real educational opportunities.
For sure. And maybe a final thought to leave everyone with. Thinking about that tiny stream at Itasca and knowing it becomes this massive river system really makes you think, doesn't it? How actions taken right there in that relatively small headwaters area can ripple outwards. How they can affect the health and the life of a river that flows through the heart of the country.
Yeah. What's our responsibility, right, to protect a source like that?
Exactly. What role do we play in being stewards of these vital starting points? Something definitely worth mulling over.